Creation's Journey to Life, Day 70, Backchat. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the inner dimension of the accepted and allowed self functions like a mirror that can be viewed by self as a measurement of self-honesty and integrity. And if dishonest and without integrity, will be focused on self-interest. And when self-honest with life, integrity will reflect in all ways what is best for all life always. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that thoughts are the memory relationship experiences over time, programmed into the mirror as the physical body that reflects what has been accepted and allowed as self that participates in this world, which will show in the world system and the place the self occupies in the world system. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that Backchat exists as thoughts, feelings, emotions, memory, justification, behavior, desires, fears, likes, dislikes, love, and time, as all the dimensions of the self as personal consciousness that accept the world consciousness as it exists today. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that Backchat acts as the protector of personal self-interest and is always developing relationships to allow the personal consciousness to serve as a unique entity that is valued according to Backchat and the feedback received from other humans Backchat, and the Backchat of the world system that will reflect the position of the ego in the world system, used as validation that this is real, without having a clue how this inner self that is so highly trusted is actually created. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the world as it exists is the product of the inner feedback as Backchat that only serves the ego in the contest of winning and conquering perceived world values for the purpose of validating the self as interest as a value of happiness, disregarding life, unless the human is in immediate danger and forcing change. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that Backchat can only be assessed through writing or visible behavior or word context by an external support and can be hidden within fake presentations by the ego as private personal, which will also be revealed within the context that the person stands in personal and world relationships, showing whether within the participation each is protecting ownership and belief or lead to what is best for all life in all ways. In this, the skill of self-honesty must be developed to find how this abomination as inner self-ego was created that has caused a world that does not honor life. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the actual thoughts of another cannot be seen, as it is the process of self-honesty that gives the person the opportunity to rebirth as life here in the physical, and it remains the personal responsibility of each one that will determine the consequences after death. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that pain plays a role in supporting self and others in determining where the ego abuses the physical by creating ways of existence that are not best for all life, and that pain will only emerge after extensive self-honest self-forgiveness and committed correction, and will take several years of investigation to establish a clear self-honest self-support to eventually lead to the actual rebirth as life, as the physical, as the living word, as what is best for all life, always. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the study of inner self should be in the context of the physical world that will create a human as self that is best for all life always, with no personal self-interest ever featuring, never mind being, as the cause of decisions as who the person is in this world. I commit myself to show that the inner self that has become a consumer product in especially spirituality is the evil that misrepresents spirit as life on earth, causing the physical as real life to be subjected to a life of horror if basic support like money is not available. I commit myself to show that thought is always about self-interest and never about what is best for life on earth. I commit myself to show that the programming of the inner self as conscious awareness is not understood and therefore allowed to be an entity that can roam the earth unchecked, causing endless harm to life. I commit myself to show that anyone reacting to the message of destiny is under the influence of the inner entity as self-consciousness that will do anything to protect itself from being held accountable. I commit myself to show those willing to accept the challenge to become self-honest to eventually birth the real self as life from the physical, how the inner entity is programmed and can be removed. I commit myself to show that the world system is a reflection of the inner self-consciousness of the entity, and as the world is not a place for life, so is the entity as self-ego, not life. I commit myself to show that self-honesty is never a game of superiority or knowledge, and must be cross-referenced in both the bodies of the ego entity and the buddy support through direct demonstration without question or any possibilities of manipulation. I commit myself to show that writing is a tool of self-discipline that will greatly assist in the removal of the entity, and that this process will take a minimum of 7 years of daily self-honest self-forgiveness with committed directive action that must lead in all ways to a world that is best for all life eternally. I commit myself to show that if the external life is not created as what is best for all life on earth, even in limitation, no eternal life will exist after death.